Our next question is a fairly common question that is asked or brought up in the community, and it is comes from Smilny, and they are currently learning Thai and want to immerse by watching content through Netflix or YouTube, etc. They have gone through some content intended for natives that's from Thailand. However, they find that sort of that Thai TV and Thai style to be a bit draining with all the extra effects and things that like they're not used to from, I presume, more Western media. Mm-hmm. And they haven't found anything particular that really is interesting for them to learn from. And so they ask, is there really a negative side effect from consuming content that was originally in another language and then translated or dubbed into Thai, their target language? They feel like there could be a drawback because ideas may be interpreted slightly differently because of it's a translation, and that they're possibly missing out on the sense of culture through use of the language, as well as any kind of cultural references, like stories that people grow up with and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely downsides. That being said, and I can go into those downsides in a second. That being said, find the thing that you're interested in, right? The whole point of this process of learning a language, unless you're doing it for work, if you're doing it for fun, then it should be fun. You should find the things that are interesting to you that will keep you engaged for the long term, even if those things are not the most optimal contents, the most optimal resources. Mm-hmm. What's optimal for you is what is going to keep you engaged long term, not necessarily what is going to help you achieve your goal fastest. The way I think about it is it doesn't matter how fast you're going if you never finish the race. But in terms of the downsides, there's a couple. One is you will almost never find matching subtitles for dubbed content. The audio is actually a rewritten script rather than subs, which are a translation of the original. And so they almost never match. One exception, Pokemon, for some reason, has matching subtitles and dubs. I don't know why, but it's a very rare exception.
And also with the rise of AI subbing and things, you can also make your own sometimes, which I've actually had success with.
If you are technical, you can use Whisper. Whisper is actually getting very good at transcribing things. Mm-hmm. It was released by OpenAI, I believe. I don't know if it supports Thai yet, but I assume that they'll be expanding into various languages over time. And
over time.
So there's going to be technology that allows for this in the future. It's not quite there yet for most languages, but for some languages it actually is. And like the YouTube transcription algorithm is decent, it gets things right like 95% of the time, unless it's something like very slang heavy.
There's also some languages where it's just strictly worse by a good amount.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So like if some languages you're just SOL there.
Yeah.
Not slice of life.
Anyways, so the matching subs issue will probably go away over time as AI gets better. The bigger issue, which you mentioned, is there's a lack of cultural references, the sense of humor, the storylines, everything is related to the culture from which the content came from. And so if you are only immersing with dubbed content, you will never see the cultural references of the culture that you're actually trying to absorb, because language is not just about language itself, it's about the culture that created that language and that is embedded in that language. So one of the things I note is in the dubbed Spanish content that I listen to, it doesn't sound anything like Mexican Spanish or Colombian Spanish. It's this more neutral. It doesn't use slang. It doesn't use a lot of idioms. The way people talk. And so going from English to Spanish is spoken a lot faster than English is. And so to make the audio match the timing of the English one, the Spanish is actually slower in the dub than people actually talk in Spanish on podcasts or whatever else. So there's another component there where if I only practiced with English that had been translated into Spanish, I would not be able to understand things that are faster than that, which is what normal people sound like. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different downsides to it. I would also say the phrasings I've noticed are different in translated content than in native content. The way people express ideas is very different. So it's something that can be a useful tool, especially to keep you engaged. I don't think there's harm in doing it for if it's just a portion of your immersion, but you definitely need to get that native content as well.
Something I've also found is that there are certain translators that are just kind of better and more artistic.
Sure.
I almost see it as a similar to like narrators for audiobooks, where they almost give a whole different life to a book on their like quality as a narrator. A lot of some translators just aren't as good, and they don't, and like their stuff just isn't as good. But some are really, really strong. I've read some books that are originally in English in Spanish, and I can't figure out how they would have phrased that in English. Like it feels so unique, and I've really enjoyed those. And then some I'm like, this is just weird and odd, and I literally enjoyed it less.
Yeah, translation is an art. It's not a science. And the ideas that come through in the translated version are often very different and are meant to convey the same emotion to the target audience, which a direct translation would not do. And identifying the thing that is going to convey that emotion or that idea to the end audience is something that every translator is going to think of differently.
That's also why, like in Spanish specifically, there are Latin American translations and Spain translations for lots of different things, because they've realized that it's kind of different enough that there's reason to do that.
Yeah, and it's not just about different words or different conjugations; it's actually different ideas.
And the last thing I want to tack on here is that, like for me, I sort of didn't really try to focus much on absorbing cultural things like that, because I was like, okay, at a certain point, I can just talk to people and ask questions and learn through that style of immersion, rather than trying to watch kids shows that people grew up with in Mexico, because like I don't really want to do that, but I'll like learn the references by hearing about actually a fairly big famous Mexican actor who did lots of kid shows a while ago, recently just died, and like hearing about that, sort of learning a bit about the past, and hearing some of like a literal word he made up that stuck in Mexican culture, that sort of thing, I can get after the fact by sort of immersing with the people, and sort of also a way that I see of like repairing that damage that you might cause later, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if at the end of the day you're planning to go live in the country for an extended period of time, a lot of these problems get solved anyway. A lot of the recommendations in the roadmap are based on the assumption that you are not living in the country, and so you're using the internet as a sort of artificial immersion. That is the entire premise of the Refold roadmap, is creating this artificially immersive environment. If you are going to the country, then a lot of the recommendations, a lot of the problems that you encounter by not being in the country go away.